Breaking news from around your world on this Friday, February 1st, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. North Korea has pledged to destroy all its nuclear material enrichment facilities. That's according to the U.S. Special Envoy to North Korea, Stephen Biegun. He said the promise was made to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo when he visited North Korea in October. But Biegun said North Korea must provide a complete list of its nuclear assets before any deal can be reached. President Donald Trump had earlier claimed tremendous progress in talks between the countries. Speaking in the Oval Office on Thursday, the president said he would soon announce the date and location of a planned second summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. The pair met in Singapore last year, the first meeting between a sitting U.S. president and a North Korean leader, and signed an optimistic but vague declaration of their commitment to denuclearization. He said Kim Jong-un had committed, in his talks with Pompeo, to the dismantlement and destruction of all its plutonium and uranium facilities, which provide the material for nuclear weapons. Biegun said the U.S. position remained that it would not lift sanctions until denuclearization is complete, but indicated it could provide assistance in other ways, saying, "We did not say we will not do anything until you do everything." Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Friday the United States will abandon a missile treaty it signed with Russia more than 3 decades ago because Moscow's not holding up its end of the deal. At a news conference, Pompeo said Russia has weapons that violate the terms of the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, putting, he said, millions of Americans and European allies at risk. U.S. officials gave Russia 60 days to come into compliance. Pompeo said Russia has jeopardized American security interests. The move follows broken negotiations between the U.S. and Russia this week. Pompeo said it does no good to sign an agreement if one of the parties ignores it. Konstantin Kosachev, chairman of Russia's Committee of Foreign Affairs, said the U.S. has taken another step toward destroying the world. The INF treaty was signed by President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in 1987, intended to prevent both countries from positioning short and intermediate range land-based nuclear missiles in Europe. Russia has 4 battalions of cruise missiles, which total about 100 plus spares. Those missiles are barred by the 32-year-old pact. Pompeo said Trump had hoped that Russia would destroy some of the missiles and had gone to tremendous lengths to preserve the treaty. It will take about 6 months to withdraw, which buys more time for Russia to reverse course and come into compliance. The Arctic air mass that put the Midwest U.S. into a deep freeze this week is now being blamed for at least 21 deaths as its effects now move to the northern East Coast. A trained weather observer in Mount Carroll, Illinois, reported that the temperatures fell to 38 degrees below zero, which would surpass the state of Illinois' previous low of minus 36 degrees. Chicago sank to a low of 23 degrees below zero Wednesday, tying the 5th coldest day since the National Weather Service started keeping records in that city in 1872. The temperature in Chicago fell short of the record at 21 degrees below zero, while 2 other cities in the state, including Rockford and Moline, set new records at minus 30 and minus 33 degrees, respectively. The freezing weather also taxed electrical grids, as thousands in Wisconsin and Iowa experienced power outages. General Motors said late Wednesday it suspended operations at 11 Michigan plants due to the cold. A total of 2,350 flights within, into, or out of the U.S. were canceled on Thursday, and 3,581 were delayed, according to flight tracking website FlightAware. Federal border agents on Thursday made the largest seizure of the synthetic opioid fentanyl in U.S. history. A drug-sniffing dog helped Customs and Border Protection officers find 254 pounds of the drug, enough to kill 57 million people, in a floor compartment of a tractor-trailer truck loaded with cucumbers and trying to cross a border checkpoint in Nogales, Arizona. That was twice as big as the previous record seizure of fentanyl, which is blamed for the majority of U.S. drug overdose deaths. That shipment was found in a truck in Nebraska. Agents also found 395 pounds of methamphetamine. The fentanyl had a value of $3.5 million. The meth was worth $1.1 million. Agents arrested the driver, a 26-year-old Mexican national, and charged him with 2 counts of possession with intent to distribute. Last year, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention blamed fentanyl and other opioids for driving up drug-related deaths by 45% between 2016 and 2017. Apple revoked Google's ability to offer its employees internal-only iPhone apps, likely causing significant disruption to the search giant. Apple said it was punishing its rival for breaking its developers policy a day after it took the same action against Facebook. The move came after both firms used special access for market research. Apple restored Google's access to the software by the end of the working day on Thursday. After more than 24 hours of disruption, Facebook had its access restored earlier on Thursday. Apple allows companies the ability to exert special control over employee devices in order to add additional security and control. Many firms use this to distribute apps that might contain private information to employees, but not the wider public. Apple explicitly prohibits firms from using this access on regular consumers. On Monday, it was revealed that Facebook had used its enterprise access to distribute a market research app to the public, including teenagers. On Tuesday, it became known that Google was doing something similar with its own app, Screenwise. Apple appears to have stood firm on its position that any developer using their enterprise certificates to distribute apps to consumers will have their certificates revoked. While Google has its own operating system, Android, a large number of the company's almost 100,000 employees use iPhones for their work, and the firm releases much of its software on both Android and Apple iOS. Twitter identified and removed troll accounts from 5 countries trying to manipulate the 2018 midterms, according to information the company revealed Thursday. Thousands of Twitter accounts from countries including Russia, Iran, and Venezuela were reportedly found to be copying Russia's 2016 interference tactics. Many of the accounts were backed by foreign governments and either spread disinformation or inflamed political discourse. The accounts used the same tactics as the Internet Research Agency, a Moscow-backed group indicted by special counsel Robert Mueller. 418 accounts came from Russia. 764 troll accounts from Venezuela were using IRA techniques, and another 6,000 U.S.-based posts with misinformation were deleted. Separately, Facebook removed 783 pages, groups, and accounts that were engaging in coordinated inauthentic behavior tied to Iran. Law enforcement officials said more than 24 people were arrested and tens of millions of dollars worth of counterfeit NFL tickets and merchandise was seized since last year's Super Bowl. The arrests and seizures were the product of a joint operation between the Department of Justice, the FBI, U.S. Customs and Border Control, and the NFL, called Operation Team Player. During the NFL's annual anti-counterfeit merchandise press conference held Thursday in Atlanta, days before Super Bowl 53, Nick Annan, the Atlanta special agent in charge of Homeland Security, said more than 285,000 items of counterfeit goods worth some $24 million were confiscated in the last year, an increase of almost $10 million from the year before. U.S. Attorney William McSwain also announced during the news conference charges against 13 individuals, including conspiracy to traffic in counterfeit goods, wire fraud, and aiding and abetting. He said, unfortunately, the Super Bowl attracts people looking to make a quick buck. He then warned sports fans to be cautious and be on the lookout for scams when buying sports paraphernalia and tickets. Officials said a total of 28 people, including those announced Thursday, have been arrested during the operation and 21 were convicted. U.S. prosecutors on Thursday arrested 3 people in connection with alleged birth tourism businesses that offered pregnant Chinese women help traveling to the U.S. to give birth so their babies would automatically become American citizens. More than a dozen others were charged but were believed to have returned to China. Authorities said that over 2 years, one business called UWin USA charged pregnant women $40,000 to $80,000 each to come to California, stay in an upscale apartment, and give birth. Another was called USA Happy Baby. The businesses, which were raided in 2015, coached the women to hide their pregnancies and lie about their plans to give birth in the U.S. President Trump said on Thursday he will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping soon to try to seal a comprehensive trade deal, as Trump and his top trade negotiator both cited substantial progress in 2 days of high-level talks. Trump, speaking at the White House during a meeting with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He, said he was optimistic that the world's 2 largest economies could reach the biggest deal ever made. The Chinese delegation's statement said China will expand imports of U.S. agricultural, energy, service, and industrial products, according to China's official Xinhua news agency. The Chinese trade delegation said in a statement that the 2 days of high-level talks made important progress. No specific plans for a meeting with President Xi were announced, but Trump said there could be more than one meeting. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin were invited to bring a U.S. negotiating team to Beijing around mid-February, with dates still pending. The White House said in a statement that a scheduled March 2nd tariff increase on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods to 25% from 10% was a hard deadline if no deal was reached by March 1st. And that's your update for this Friday, February 1st, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.